big round numbers, it means that we've got to go, and Canada is close enough to the United States, but we've got to go as individuals from about 22 tons of CO2 per person per year down to 2. Effectively have to decarbonize the whole economy. Now, back to my 2 deficit slides. One of the difficulties we have is in maintaining public opinion on this issue. And public attention has strayed. This is a graphic taken from the New York Times. This is concern about the economy and jobs. And you can see this is skyrocketed. This has continued to rise. This is public opinion concern about environment and global warming down here. Gallup poll data shows virtually the same thing. This is a response to a question you think it's overestimated. And so on both sides, there is a convergence that says, yes, it is overestimated. It's not that serious an issue, even though in the meantime, the science continues to come out showing that climate is much more sensitive to human forcing than previously thought. So we began our work on this 15,000-foot level with several assumptions. One is that if we deal with climate in the States, we've got to reckon with the biggest policy failure probably in human history, and it is U.S. energy policy. Turn the coin of climate over to the other side, it's all about energy policy. We have effectively subsidized all the wrong things. I'm not going to go into the numbers here, but the numbers are striking. And it depends on how much you include, but they go up into trillions of dollars to support annually the coal industry, the oil industry, the nuclear industry, all of the wrong industries. The third issue we wrestled with was this one. What do you tell the public? And you all, how many have seen the movie A Few Good Men? Jack Nicholson, Tom Cruise, okay. The Nicholson picture here is one taken right at the point in that movie where he's on the stand, he's a Marine Corps commandant, there's been a murder on his base. Tom Cruise is a young JAG attorney who is to get the truth out of him. And very tense scene in the movie, and he says to Nicholson, the commander, said, I just want the truth from you. And long pause, and Nicholson looks at him and says, and part of his scowl, you can't handle the truth. Now, there is a viewpoint that people cannot handle the truth. That if you tell your students what is really going on, and it's going to be beam me out of here, Scotty, or it's going to be drugs, alcohol, eat, drink, and be merry. And T.S. Eliot's famous comment that humankind can't bear much reality. That is a certain view of human nature. Down in the lower right-hand corner, the famous scowl of Winston Churchill, taken during World War II. The scowl, I am told, is the result of the photographer in Toronto, well, about 1942 or whenever it was going to photograph Churchill, and of course he had a cigar sticking out of his mouth. The photographer snatched the cigar out of his mouth and clicked the picture. So what you're seeing, the famous scowl, which people interpret as a look of determination against Adolf Hitler, in fact is the early stages of oral deprivation. But Churchill, now Churchill, bombs falling on London in 1940, Churchill doesn't go to the British people with ruin all around him and say, hey, this is a terrific time for urban renewal. He doesn't tell, hey, we can whoop the Nazis at a profit. No, no. It's blood, toil, tears, and sweat. Now, these aren't apples to apples kinds of issues. The Nazis and World War II were relatively short-term enterprises. Wars last 3 to 5 years. Our attention span to fight wars probably doesn't go much beyond 5 years. But the problem we have with climatic change is it isn't big, it isn't hairy, it doesn't have long teeth, it's not dependably loathsome. We met the enemy. It's us. It's you and it's me. There's nobody to project anything else on. It's our carbon emissions, particularly those of us in the developed world. So the issue that we wrestled with in the PCAP project was, what do we tell the public? And we came up with the strange policy that we really should tell, or the president, we want to recommend it, the president do that strange thing for politicians, just tell the truth. As somebody once said, it'll amaze your friends and confound your enemies. But in this case, what we need is presidential leadership, or leadership in every classroom, in every college, every university, every corporation, every province, every state, that says to the people that we are in serious trouble. Connect the first part of this talk. That is simply the science. Time is really, really short for us. The news is not good. There's no way in which you can make it good. People talk glibly about climate opportunities. It's not an opportunity for most people. It's going to be blood, toil, tears, and sweat sort of thing. So what do you tell the public? Well, that's an issue. Then we decided that the climatic change, and I think this is also true with education, is not just another item on a long list of issues. It's the linchpin that holds that list together. So if a leader, whether it's a state governor or head of a province or head of state, it doesn't matter, if you get the climate issue and energy policy issues right, lots of other things will be a lot easier or simply eliminated as problems. And then we didn't know whether we were going to work with a Democratic or Republican administration, liberal or conservative, but the more we thought about this, the less it seemed to us that this was a conservative versus liberal issue. It's not that kind of issue. This is an issue that connects us left and right in a global emergency. And again, time is short. And you can be a good liberal, you can be a good conservative, but all you really have to be is concerned about your kids and their kids to see that we've got to move. Whether it's free markets adapted to the price put on carbon, or it's intervention of the state, or preferably some combination of all of those things, we've got to move. And then the question of how do we move comes up. And these are the characteristics. It's got to be fast. Remember Hanson's 10 years, 5 of which are now gone, and maybe he was wrong by 5 years. Let's say we have 10 years. It's got to be relatively easy. It's got to be relatively cheap. It's got to promote local resilience. That would be the last point I get to. And then here's the metric. For public policy and for corporate investment, the real metric is how much carbon do we eliminate per dollar spent. And think about that. I mean, it's rather complicated to work out in every case, but it is very simple as a principle. It is the amount of carbon eliminated per dollar spent. And then it cannot be about simply switching problems. We've got to actually solve problems. So here's what our options are, at least in the States. There's a major campaign for clean coal. And I'm trying to say that if you believe in clean coal, let's talk about the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny, but I won't mention that to you. At every stage, coal is dirt. From start to finish, coal is a lousy fuel. It is a 19th century fuel. It has survived well into the 20th century, long past its expected lifespan, or it's what should have been its lifespan. In our state, not one in our country, this is kind of the politics. You can see the larger the circle, the greater the dependence on coal. So our politics kind of divide here, and then these, of course, are coal-producing states, Wyoming and Montana. So the politics get very confusing and very difficult, but in principle, fairly simple. In my part of the states, this is called mountaintop removal, and its effects now about 1.5 million acres, and this is an scene from Appalachia. The Appalachian hills are characterized by about 35 seams of coal. You can see some of these darker strands here. That's a coal seam here, probably about 5 feet thick or maybe a little bit less. This is a lower grade of coal. You can see higher grades down here lower on. But what during the Bush administration years, because they didn't enforce the Clean Water Act and so forth, they permitted coal mining companies to come in and take the tops off mountains, dump what they called overburden into the valleys. So they filled about 1,200 miles of streams so far, cut down, eliminated about 500 and some mountains, quite literally, about 1.5 million acres has been devastated.